Good morning, everybody. You are currently listening to a Tall Girls podcast hosted by a tall girl named India. I hope everyone who is tuning in today is doing super fantastic. I am joined by a very, very special guest with us today. Her name is Denvyr. Hi, Denvyr.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Of course. How are you doing today?
We're good. We are in South Florida. It's sunny. I can't complain because I know it's winter for a majority of people, so we're having a good day.
Yeah, meanwhile, up here it's snowing. You're just living the life over there. But you know what? It's fine. It's okay. We'll get there one day.
You're gonna have a white Christmas though, so a little jealous of
Well, we
that.
don't know because the snow isn't even sticking, so it's just like wet and soggy outside without any
Mm,
actual snow. So,
mm,
but it's supposed to be in the 20s next week, so we'll see how that goes.
yeah, we'll hope for the best.
So please just take a second to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yes. So my name is Denvyr, like the city, and I'm a registered dietitian. I'm a sports nutritionist and a strength and conditioning specialist. So I'm also a former athlete, and a lot of my struggles came from that, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I'm 5'11", and so recently I have been working more with tall women because a lot of my struggles came from that. And I just think a lot of tall women don't know that we have unique struggles when it comes to food and our bodies and fitness. So, yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Yes, oh my gosh, I love that. And I love the fact that you're like part of the short, tall girl crew over here. Because it's like, I feel like a lot of times there are a lot of people on here that are, over 6 feet. It's nice to have that representation of us 5'10", 5'11" girlies, you know?
Hmm. Yes.
So you did mention that you were a tall girl, 5'11". I want to hear about your experiences growing up as a tall girl, the good, the bad, the ugly. What was it like for you?
Okay. So I was thinking about this, and the good part about being tall is I think it gave me an edge in volleyball. So I grew up playing volleyball. Um, and so I was an outside hitter for anyone listening who knows volleyball. And so being tall at that age, I could reach over the net. Uh, that was basically the main benefit. So that I liked how it gave me an edge because I chose to play volleyball, and so I liked that benefit. But some of the issues with being tall were that I felt a need to shrink myself from a really young age. So around 13, 14 is when it started, and I started cutting calories. I started paying attention to, to shrink myself, to make my body smaller, I need to reduce my food, right?
Hmm.
And I think a lot of that pressure came from, well, diet culture.
Yeah.
And that was super intense in the early 2000s. I was watching shows like America's Next Top Model.
Oh gosh. That's a
Did
whole
you ever
separate
watch one of
issue.
them? Yeah.
Yes.
And with Tyra Banks literally talking to these girls, they would come up and get critiqued, and she's saying that they're too
Hmm.
big at 150 pounds. And here I am, I'm like 13 years old, already above that. And I had this, it seemed like there was this universal message of, okay, if you're tall, if you're tall and thin, you're admired and you're encouraged to model. But it's like, at what point are you too big, where you're then considered kind of a monster to
Hmm.
society? So that was always the fear in the back of my head. And it was easy for my brain to wrap around this idea of, okay, you're tall, so try to shrink yourself to be as small as possible, and then you'll be okay, right?
Hmm.
So I had that idea in the back of my head. And like I said, I started cutting calories at 13, 14 years old. The issue is that I was not eating enough, right? I was a growing teenager
Yeah.
Plus, I was an athlete, and so my cravings were out of control. Like, was hungry 24/7, but in my eyes, I thought that was a bad thing because I was like, okay, well, like I need to shrink myself and cut calories. So I kept doing that, and what would happen is I would feel so hungry and ravenous by the end of the day that I would start binging on jars of peanut butter and cookie dough in the freezer. And it became this vicious cycle because then once I would overeat, the next day I would feel really guilty and be like, okay, now I need to, I need to burn all these calories off. I need to restrict my food again. And so it was really this vicious cycle. Um, Plus all the pressures that athletes have to like look good in your uniform, and volleyball players, we wear these tiny shorts,
Hmm.
and you're really revealed. So it was just all this, a perfect storm of all these insecurities that made me try to shrink and restrict my food. So anyway, so I went through that binge restrict cycle for until I was in college, and I played volleyball in college, so that just really it continued. And it really didn't I didn't start to see the light, and I didn't start to uh, know how to really fuel my tall body until I finished my volleyball career. So it was, yeah.
Literally
So it was
not
like,
too long ago.
yeah. So not that long ago.
Hmm.
And of course, that's when I became a registered dietitian, and I learned, okay, this is how much fuel tall girls need. Like we do have these unique differences. So yeah. So that's a little bit about there are some good parts, but I think being tall, it's easy to get wrapped up in this idea that we need to shrink ourselves.
Yeah, that is very true. And that was also pretty heavy. So I do want to thank you for sharing that with us because I know that that time, well, I mean, I don't know wholeheartedly, but it wasn't easy to share with other people is what I'm trying to say. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And as
Yeah.
you mentioned before, like as both a former athlete and a dietitian, can you like speak a little bit about how being tall can affect a woman's fitness and nutritional needs compared to others?
Yeah, of course. So being tall, we are bigger women. And it's
Agree.
not a bad thing, like we kind of view from society. And so for one, our nutrition needs are different. When you are a bigger person because of our height, we require more food. And so if we are constantly comparing ourselves to these little fitness influencers on Instagram and
Mm-hmm.
TikTok and all of these what I eat in a day videos, if we're constantly comparing ourselves to that and thinking, oh, if I eat like her, I'm going to look like her, it's not going to work out. We're going to keep getting these crazy cravings, and we're not going to feel our best. We're going to feel slow. We're going to feel unenergized. And ultimately, we're not going to be at the best place where we want to be with our bodies. So we need more food. Um, what I can say is if you're over 5'8", your basal metabolic rate, which is the bare minimum amount of calories someone needs, even if you were to just lay in bed all day, like even if you were just sleeping all day, you still need food, you still need energy, and that's called your BMR. So if you're over 5'8", which I mean, most of your listeners are probably taller than that, but I would say like that's the bare minimum of tall.
Yeah.
You need at least 1,500 calories, at least. And that's the bare minimum, right? That's not even considering if you wake up and you go brush your teeth and you make breakfast and you go for a walk and you get in the car and you're going to work and you're doing all these things and exercising, like all of that needs even more energy. So really we're talking about probably even over 2,000 calories. And for a lot of athletes out there, over 3,000 calories is normal, is normal. And I know for myself, I never believed that. It was really hard to trust that I needed that much food because I was constantly comparing myself. And I'm like, there's no way, right? There's no way. I'm looking at these people who I admire and that I want to look like, and they're eating like 1,700 calories, 1,800 calories. And so in my eyes, I thought I needed to eat that much when really I needed a lot more. Um, so our nutrition needs are different. I would also say because we need more food, we need to be more strategic with the types of foods that we eat, or else we'll be hungry all day long. So a lot of tall girls, they, I feel like some tall girls think that, oh, I can just get away with eating whatever I want. Because for a lot of tall women, they can maintain like a lower weight or thinner body pretty easily. But just because you can eat whatever you want and you're in a thin body doesn't mean that you're optimally healthy.
Hmm.
And it doesn't mean that you're going to feel your best. Because if we're just eating like snack foods all day long, you're going to feel energy crashes, your mood is going to fluctuate, uh, and that doesn't make you feel so good. So, paying attention to the right foods, things like protein, really important to have at each meal. Things like fiber. So, fiber is a carbohydrate, but it isn't digested. So fiber is in your like whole grains, it's in your vegetables, it's in your fruits, it's in seeds, nuts, a lot of plant foods. So including lots of those and including healthy fats, things like avocado and dairy and all of these things. So really being intentional about not just eating enough calories overall, but the types of calories that you're eating so that you're not hungry all day long. Like, there's nothing worse than just thinking about food all day. And that comes from not eating enough of the right foods. So there's that. Um, I would say also on the fitness side of things, we have long limbs. We all have long limbs, and
Yeah.
yeah, and that means that exercises can look a lot different for us. So if we're comparing again ourselves to smaller fitness people and videos that we're seeing, we can get the wrong idea and thinking that, oh, there's something wrong with my squat or oh, there's something wrong with my deadlift, when really we just have longer limbs and it's okay for it to look a little bit different. So those things are different for tall women. Also, sometimes feeling the right muscle can be challenging because our limbs are so long. So for example, if I'm doing a bicep curl, it like sometimes I'll try to shorten the range of motion to feel that muscle because so like our levers, right, getting into some of this, are longer. And so if we shorten some of the movements, we're able to engage the muscle better
Hmm.
versus if you're shorter, that naturally just happens because you have shorter limbs. So there's certain things that we can do to feel the muscles better. And if you're feeling your muscles and engaging your muscles better, then you're going to build muscle more effectively. So building muscle can be harder for us because it's harder to feel the right muscles. It's harder to eat enough protein. It's harder to do all of these things. One other thing so I was doing an exercise this week. I was on the floor doing these leg raises for my abs. And it just got me thinking, I'm like, this is so much harder for us because our legs are so long
And
and
heavy.
yes, and heavy. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh. So we really have to try. And so I was thinking, okay, what would I tell, a fellow tall girl who is struggling to feel this exercise? And you really have to like learn to use your glutes to like anchor you down. You really have to learn to like tighten your core almost like a zipper, so that you're able to move your legs because they're heavy and it's a big part of your body. So yeah, there's so many things, and that was just one example that I came up with because I struggled with it the other day. But there's also just certain exercises that work better for tall girls. And so just having that awareness is really helpful too.
Yeah, that was honestly very informative. Thank you so much for that. Because I don't know, like I just like going off the point of you said, like these fitness influencers and so forth. Because when you're looking at a phone screen, looking at a computer, looking at an iPad, it's kind of hard to judge how tall these people are. And it's like you
Hmm.
see so many of them, you think that that's just the standard. And I mean, I guess you could say it is the standard, but it's the standard for the standard height. We're not
Yeah,
part of that standard height. And that kind of just
exactly.
stresses the importance of having to follow people who are similar to you, who have
Yeah.
similar body types to you, even similar heights to you. And then even something as simple as, the exercises, because that was also brought up in another episode with the Pilates instructor, Debbie. Oh my gosh, this is like the second time this in another episode that I brought her up. Um, but she was also even talking about how she was doing CrossFit, and one of the trainers is telling her that she needs to get lower, but because she was following the same form as the other people who were shorter than her, it felt like it was impossible. But she
Hmm.
had to widen her stance in order to squat down lower.
Hmm.
So, it
Oh yeah.
really just shows the importance that, we have to like educate ourselves on things specifically for our body and not rely on others who are shorter, who have different body types than us, or even somebody who we don't know fully know their physical situation. That sounds so weird, but
No, I get what you mean. Yeah. The other thing too is our posture. So
yeah.
tall girls listening, like they know that like check your posture. When you hear
hmm
this, you're gonna be like, okay, let me stand up, sit up straighter. That's an issue too. That so I've been posting a little bit on my Instagram, like the tall girl protocol, the tall
Oh
girl
yeah, I
morning
literally saw
protocol.
that before this recording on your story.
Yeah, because we're always like, I know for myself, I have a desk job, so I'm always kind of hunched over. And I also know that when I'm around shorter people or just in like, a social setting, I have to watch myself because I'll tend to be like a little hunched over to try to, it's harder to hear shorter people or
Yeah,
like, what'd you say? So yeah, so even
exactly.
the posture thing is different for tall girls too.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And I know you spoke about this a little bit in the previous question. But are you able to just like share, I would say two-ish, two or three-ish common misconceptions about like fitness and nutrition for tall women?
Hmm.
And that kind of leads into the next question of like tips to navigate that. And honestly, just staying healthy overall and
Hmm.
staying energized. And I think that something that we can also potentially address is the weight situation, as you were talking about
Hmm.
earlier. 'Cause I did this in another episode about how tall girls just overall weigh more than
Hmm.
somebody who would have a similar body type to them around the same
Hmm.
age and so forth. So yeah, let's just start out with two or three common misconceptions about, fitness, health, nutrition for tall girls and like some tips to navigate that.
Yes, perfect. Uh, so, I mean, right away, starting off with the thing that you just said, the weight for tall girls, that is such a big thing, and takes some mental work to wrap your head around and really accept that, okay, weight doesn't define me. It's okay if my weight is heavier than other people around me. It's okay if I weigh just as much as my boyfriend or brother or other men. Like that is a huge thing. And I know for myself, even when I was in college and I was like, I would say more accepting of the fact that, okay, I'm tall, I have muscle, that means that I'm going to be heavier than, shorter people. And I don't know how this came up, but for some reason, my neighbor who was a baseball player found out what my weight was. And so
Literally how?
I can't remember. I think it was because we had a project or something. We were both studying
Oh,
exercise
okay, okay.
science. So I think that's maybe how it came up.
hmm
But so he announced it to everyone who was in my living room at the time, which I think were other athletes and whatever. So he was like, wow, he's like, you weigh, I think I weighed like 165 at the time, which now I weigh more, but regardless. So he's like, wow, you weigh 165 pounds. He's like, you weigh as much as me. And I was mortified. I was like, what? I was like, why would you say that? And it was so embarrassing at the
That is
time.
so out of pocket.
So yeah, so I was really embarrassed. But now I would say to my past self, it's okay. Weight really doesn't mean a whole lot. I say this to my own clients. We a lot of the times won't even track weight. Even if I have a client who is working on losing some body fat or some body composition goals, a lot of the times I'm like, hey, let's just put the scale away because it can mess with our heads so much. And it doesn't matter because as long as you are doing the habits that you're supposed to, so for example, with my clients, we focus on strength training, trying to put on muscle. Like putting on muscle is such a valuable thing. It sets us up for health for the rest of our lives. And so if we're focused on that and we're building muscle, you could very much like be building muscle, losing body fat at the same time and stay the same weight. And that is a good thing. Like that is an amazing thing. So weight really doesn't mean all that much, especially for tall girls, because we tend to shy away from muscle, I feel like, because we're scared to be bigger than we already are.
Hmm.
And so I feel like for a lot of tall women, their automatic goal is, oh, I need to be thinner, like I need to lose weight. But if we would just drop the weight and what that means to us, if we start training intentionally, strength training, trying to invest in muscle, and we start eating enough of the right foods, you're going to, for one, be healthier, and two, you're going to like the way that you look even more. Because people say, "Oh, I want to be like toned and athletic and whatnot." And it's like, okay, that comes from building muscle. Like you need muscle. And so that's such a positive goal to have. Um, so all in all, it's like let's let's shy away from weight. Weight doesn't mean anything. Even according to the BMI, right? You can be so healthy, you can be so athletic, you can be an overweight BMI and still be a tremendous like tall girl and whatever, in your body. Um, it just weight doesn't correlate with health. Exactly. So that's what I would say about weight. It's okay if you weigh over 150 pounds. It's okay if it's like many tall girls weigh over 200 pounds and are still very healthy. So it's so individual. And I think that even like working with someone to try to get some of these kinks out about the beliefs of our weight in our bodies can be really helpful. So I would say that. Um, I would also say that, so I kind of touched on this, but there's this misconception that strength training will make us bulky, or will just make us feel too big and too much like a monster, or not feminine, right? And that's a big misconception because, like I said, you need muscle. If the goal is to build your best body, which means like just being healthy, it's okay to also like build a body that you like the way that it looks, and also realizing that your habits need to be healthy too. So, yeah, so lifting heavy weights are not going to make you like build tons and tons of muscle, right? It's hard for tall girls already to build muscle. So by focusing on lifting heavier, you'll actually like you will gain so much confidence from that, and you'll also get all these amazing benefits. So it's not something that we have to shy away from. I mean, we can get into this whole other conversation about like why we fear being bulky and just all of those like words that we use. But that's what I would say for now is don't be scared to get bulky. You're not going to even like get bulky if you think that's a bad thing. And lifting weights can be a really, really positive thing for your confidence, I would say, in your health, of course.
That was really insightful, honestly, especially with the whole thing about weight. think it's very important to remind ourselves that weighing more is actually like we're supposed to weigh more to exist.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. And you did touch on the in the last part a little bit about confidence. So that kind of brings us to our last question. What is one piece of advice that you want to give to the tall girls listening right now who are struggling with their self-esteem because of their height?
Yes. Um, so I like to say that being tall and the fact that the fact that we do take up space is a superpower. And the reason that I say that is because if we are more noticeable and if we are getting attention, like that allows us to make so much more impact in the world. So for you, for example, you're tall, you're more noticed when you're out in public. And because of that, that can spark up more conversations. And then you're then able to share the word about your podcast and the things that you're doing in your life and the impact that you want to leave. So I've really retrained my brain to think that way too, because just like you, I'm on a mission too to not only help the tall girls feel amazing and build their best bodies and confidence, um, but also all women too. So I think if we can lean into the fact that standing out is a really positive thing, and if you have a mission, I mean, we all have missions, but we have to find what that is. It can be such a positive thing if we lean into that.
Oh, that was so nice. Thank you so much for that. So basically, all in all, don't just take up space, take up more space.
Take up more
Period.
space. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you
Love
so
that.
much for that, Denver. This was honestly a great episode, very insightful. I feel like I learned a lot. I learned more than I ever did in my one semester of nutrition.
Yeah, exactly. Good, good.
Maybe because it was tailored more so towards me and my body. But please,
Yes, exactly.
where can we find you on the interweb? Like socials, websites, anything? Like where can we find you?
Okay, the interweb. So I'm on Instagram, Tall Girl Nutritionist. I'm on TikTok. I'm also on YouTube. So I have a lot of long form videos. If you like the type of content that I shared here, you can dive into that. And yeah, if you want to work with me, you can just send me a DM on Instagram and I'll be happy to chat with you.
Yay, of course, everything is going to be linked in the description, so it's super easy for you guys to check it out. And of course, I'll take this time to plug myself at a Tall Girls podcast. Search that everywhere. Like you could put me in Google. Google knows me by now, so I should come up first results, period. But
Yes.
yeah, all of my stuff is going to be linked in the description. And thank you again so much, Denver, for coming onto this podcast and sharing your knowledge and expertise in the nutrition and fitness world, especially for tall women.
Oh my gosh, anytime, India. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay! And of course, if you guys have any other questions or comments for Denver, please hit her up. Please don't hit me up. I know absolutely nothing about this. I graduated with a business degree. Let's keep that in mind. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next one. Good night and goodbye.